Guess what? Today we're gonna make a cake, a classic vanilla layer cake. And I have a fun surprise that we're gonna add in later on. But before we get started, you know what that means. You have to have permission from your parents or guardians because we're gonna be using the oven and we're gonna be using food products. So I hope you can join along and bake with me. Alright, so the first thing we're going to do is we're going to preheat the oven to 350 degrees and you're going to grease 3 9-inch cake pans. If you don't have 9-inch, grease what you have, but just know that this is a large recipe, so you are going to have a lot of cake. So for the flour, remember when we made the pancakes and I said stir it up first? I want you to stir up the flour first. We need 4 cups of flour, so we're going to scoop our flour. We're going to level it off with something flat. When you're baking, you always want to be as precise as possible. You're going to put it into a sieve over a medium to large size bowl. You're going to do this, shake out the flour so that you're sifting it. And the reason why we do that is in case there's any lumps of flour, it will get rid of the lumps. So you're going to do that for 4 cups of flour. Alright, now I'm going to add my baking powder, and we need 4.5 teaspoons of baking powder. So I'm still going to use my sieve because I don't want any lumps. Alright, so I just sifted my baking powder and you can see here that there are some little lumps. I'm just going to push those through with my finger because I don't want to waste it. I know that baking is a science. I've measured out my salt. For salt, you need 1 teaspoon of salt in there. And now what we're going to do is we're just going to whisk all of these ingredients, these dry ingredients together. Alright, this recipe also requires 2 egg whites as part of the ingredients. So I'm going to get my egg whites. So to do that, I'm cracking my egg over a bowl very carefully, and I'm keeping the yolk inside the eggshell. Now I'm just going to pass that egg yolk to the other side very carefully. You have to do it more than one time to make sure you get all that egg white. Alright, I have my egg yolk. I'm just going to save that so that I can use it for something else later. I'm going to do the same thing with the next egg. Now I'm going to crack my 4 other eggs, whole eggs, into the same bowl where my egg whites are. And, oh yeah, whole egg. And once I have all my eggs in here, I'm just going to blend them together. Alright, I decided to put all my eggs and egg whites into a larger bowl because I didn't think that other bowl was big enough, and now I'm just going to beat them together. Alright, so I'm lucky enough that I have a stand mixer. So if you have a stand mixer, you're going to want to use your stand mixer and your paddle attachment for this. So I've put all my butter inside the bowl already. So you need 1 3/4 cups of unsalted butter at room temperature, of course. And you need 2 2/3 of white sugar. 1. Alright, I creamed the butter and sugar for about 3 minutes. Now I'm going to add my egg mixture. What you want to do is you want to add the egg mixture about, you want to add it in 3 additions. So I'm leaving some of my eggs, putting them aside, and I'm going to mix this together until it's blended. I'm going to do the egg mixture again, blend, egg mixture again, blend. Alright, I have to add 1 more batch of eggs, and I just want to remind you that in between adding the eggs, every time you stop to add the eggs again, you scrape down the bowl first. So you scrape down the bowl. I also like to scrape down my paddle as well. I've already kind of scraped it down pretty well. And I'm gonna add my last addition of eggs. All right, so I had my 3 additions of eggs mixed in. I've scraped down the bowl, and now I'm gonna add 1 tablespoon of vanilla. I pour it right into the bowl. All right, I'm gonna blend in that vanilla just until it's totally blended, and then it will be time to add the flour. All right, with your mixer on low speed, you're gonna blend in the flour in 3 additions and the milk in 2 additions. We're gonna alternate between them. So I'm starting with the flour, sprinkling, I'm trying to guesstimate about 1/3 of my flour. Put it in there, reattach my paddle, and of course, because it's the flour, I don't want it to get everywhere. And I'm just gonna turn it on low until it's blended. All right, I added my first addition of flour. Now I'm going to add my milk, so about half of my milk. And again, blending it on low speed until it's just blended. Okay, so I've now added my second addition of flour, and I'm gonna blend it on low again. All right, I added in that second addition of flour, and now I'm just gonna take a moment and I'm gonna scrape everything down, because you can see there's a lot of flour still stuck on the bowl. And in this phase, in this stage of you adding the milk and the flour, you want to make sure that at least once you scrape the bowl down. And you can see I started off with just a little bit at the top, but now I'm going all the way to the bottom, making sure that I'm really scraping it. We don't want to have any dry bits in our cake. We want it to be well mixed together. All right, it's time for me to add the last bit of milk, and I'm going to pour it in slowly this time so that it doesn't splash up on me. All right, I've done both additions of milk. I'm now going to add the last addition of flour and blend it on low. Before you begin, you need to grease your cake pans. So what I do is I put some butter on some waxed paper, and I just grease them by rubbing the butter all around. And you have to also make sure that you get it on the sides, like that, okay? Rub it all the way around, and then you don't want to leave any of those lumps in there, so just get those lumps out. And if you have any thick spots, usually I just take kind of a piece of the wax paper and just kind of smooth that down as well. Now, the other thing is you need to add parchment paper. I already measured and cut out my parchment for the inside of the bottom of this pan. Remember, parchment is different than wax paper. You don't want wax paper in there. You can buy parchment paper even at your dollar store, okay? Now, the other trick is you have to butter that parchment paper. This will really help so that your cakes don't stick to your pans. All right, it's time for us to add our batter to the cake pan. You don't want to overfill it, so just double check before you decide if you need more. Just spin it around a little bit. All right, so I filled 1 cake pan, but the person that I'm making this for actually requested a funfetti cake. So I'm adding some of these fun flat sprinkles. I think they're called sequins or something. Oh, quins. They're called quins. Into my bowl. And I'm just going to blend it in with my spatula, because you don't want to over mix a cake, because that's when you lose the light texture of the cake. So I'm just going to gently stir those in there. All right, remember I said that this recipe makes a lot of cake. So now I'm filling up my other cake pans. These are just tiny cake pans. You probably don't have cake pans this small. I had to buy these special because I do make cakes for people sometimes, and they want to have different size cakes. So fill up your cake pans, and I'm going to have to find some other cake pans, or maybe some cupcakes to use the rest of my batter. All right, time to put the other cakes into the oven. Always try to bake on the middle shelf in the middle, because that's where the heat is the evenest. unless your recipe says something else. Alright, I took all the cakes out of the oven and now they are cooling on their racks. I think the half-hour time that my cookbook suggests is not accurate. So I had to use longer time for these cake pans, even though they're smaller than the ones that they suggested. If you choose to do cupcakes, I think the time was about 25 minutes. It's always safe to err on the side of caution and use less time, check them, and then add more time as necessary. I'm going to let these cool before I slice them and wrap them up and put them in the freezer. Hi, so the cakes are baked, I split them, and I put them in the freezer overnight. So now I'm going to be making my icing. Today we're going to be making a Swiss meringue buttercream. If you don't have the time or patience or ingredients to make this, that's okay. Just use an American buttercream, or you know, if it's easier for you, just use the icing that you buy at the grocery store. Let's get cracking. In a medium saucepan, bring about an inch or so of water to a simmer. Once you see it simmering, what you're going to do is you're going to combine your egg whites and sugar. Here are my egg whites and sugar, and all I'm going to do is I'm going to put it over top of the bowl, and now I'm going to whisk it until the sugar has totally combined into the egg whites. You're going to whisk it gently until it's very hot to the touch, or if you actually have a candy thermometer, it reads 140 degrees Fahrenheit. But the way I do it is I just keep whisking until the sugar has completely dissolved. That way you know that it's hot enough. If you don't have a hand mixer that has the whisk attachments, that's okay, just use a regular whisk. I just find my arm gets tired, so I do it this way. Alright, I think my egg whites are almost ready. I'm just going to put my fingers in, and I rub my fingers together, and I don't feel any sugar, so now I know that it's ready. Pour the egg white mixture into the bowl of a stand mixer fitted with the whisk attachment. Whisk on medium-high speed until the egg whites have cooled to room temperature, doubled in volume, and hold medium peaks. In the meantime, I'm going to start cutting my butter into chunks. Alright, so my egg whites were whipping for about 15 minutes actually, because I really wanted to make sure my bowl was warm. And as you can see, the peaks will stay up when I do that. So you know that it's ready for you to start adding your butter. When you add the butter, you're going to turn your mixer to medium-low, and you're just going to slowly add the butter, a few cubes at a time, increasing the speed to medium-high after each addition, and beating until the butter is fluffy and incorporated before you add more. You can see how it's really starting to come together, and as it gets thicker you have to add the butter slower because it just takes that much longer. So you can see, you just watch it until you can see that it starts to get broken up. Alright, all my butter has been added, and the last step that we're going to do is I'm just going to beat it on medium-high until everything is fluffy and I know that everything is incorporated. I'm going to do that for about 2 minutes. I'm going to stop the mixer, I should say, scrape the bowl, and then I'm going to add my vanilla, and then I'm going to beat for 2 more minutes on medium speed. Add the vanilla, and remember we're going to beat it for 2 more minutes. Okay, the icing is done, and you can use this immediately, or you could store it in an airtight container in the fridge for up to a week, but make sure that it's always room temperature before you use it. You're going to love this icing. It is just the perfect consistency and not too sweet.
right now, my mom's trying to stick some fondant on cardboard and wood. It's actually working really well, and I enjoy it very much. Ooh.
Now that our cakes are finished, I hope you enjoyed that, and I hope you also realize that there's so many different ways for you to be creative when you're at home. It's not just drawing or painting, it's also these other things like baking and cooking. There's so many different things that you can do to be creative. You just have to be creative and think about it. See you later. Bye.